Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, and welcome to a session here at the Balsillie School today, where we are hosting Her Excellency Ambassador Nasise Challi Jira for a conversation on the recent developments in Ethiopia. A warm welcome to all participants joining us today. Following the first half hour of this conversation, we would invite you to direct any questions for Her Excellency through the raise hand function on your Zoom panel or through the chat function. We will do our best to get through as many questions as we can in the latter half of the session. Before we begin, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. For those of you in the audience who are tuning in from outside of Canada, one of the actions that we take to advance reconciliation between settler and Indigenous peoples is to reflect on our relationship with the land and the continuous process of colonization that deeply impacts our work. Acknowledging the land is the process of deliberately naming that this is Indigenous land and that Indigenous peoples have rights to this land. The Balsillie School of International Affairs is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, which is a traditional territory of the Attawandaran, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. It's particularly important that we acknowledge the land upon which we are situated in all that we do, including today's critical conversation. And now it's my privilege to introduce today's distinguished guest speaker. Nasise Challi Jira is Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ethiopia to Canada. Ambassador Nasise began her career as lecturer at universities in Ethiopia, including Jimma University, St. Mary's University, and Adama Science and Technology University. She then joined the public service, working as a director for the Directorate of Protocol and Public Relations in the President's Office of Oromia National Regional Government. Ambassador Nasise received her first and second degrees from Addis Ababa University. She received additional degree from the renowned University of Washington in Seattle in informatics, specializing in information assurance and cybersecurity. Prior to her current role, she was a cybersecurity engineer with the Boeing Company in Seattle. Your Excellency, you are most welcome today at the Balsillie School of International Affairs. I have shared the themes already that appear to be of interest to our wider community in terms of the current developments in Ethiopia. I will now draw on those themes through some curated questions to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join you this morning.
Thank you so much. I'd like to start with the first question, which is, please, could you explain the background to the current conflict in Ethiopia?
Okay, thank you very much. So as you know, what we are currently observing is a manifestation of what has been building for the past 2.5 years. So just for the benefit of your audience, I would like to take us back to maybe 2-3 years ago. So as you know, it's a federation that was led by EPRDF for the past 27 years, out of which TPLF, the one that is now in conflict with the federal government, is one of the leading parties among the 4 coalition in the government. So at the past 27 years, there were lots of developments in Ethiopia. There were lots of positive things, but as much as there were positive developments, there were also lots of social injustice, lots of economic and political marginalization, which has led to, starting from 2015, it has led to a very popular anti-government protest that has ushered in the new administration of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. So when it came to power, the new administration has tried to address the pertinent questions raised by the people of Ethiopia by one, opening the political space and inviting back all dissidents, all political opposition that were in exile, and even armed groups, so that they can come back and we can have an open national dialogue, and they can assume power through peaceful contestation. It also released political prisoners so that we can have the political space wide open. It also addressed lots of the injustices by introducing lots of reforms, the reforms in the justice sector, reforms in the macroeconomic and the structural reform, sectoral reform. And in addition to that, the freedom of speech was one of the other issues that was addressed, and lots of unjust laws were repealed, including laws that are terrorism laws and laws that also apply to civic society. We now believe that civic society has a role to play in our democratization process, so we have also repealed that law. So in this process, as you can see, there were lots of gains that were made the past 2.5 years. There were also lots of challenges that were faced. Most of the challenges were faced by those who are trying to maintain the status quo. As I mentioned, TPLF was the leading party among the 4 coalition that gave it the power, the opportunity to consolidate most of the power within the country. So when the new administration tries to embrace all those who are marginalized, when power sharing starts, so there is a feeling of indignation by the leadership of the TPLF. So it started then. So the process, all this feeling of indignation has started the tense situation that has been building up between the federal government and the TPLF, circling within the TPLF. So that is where it has all begun. And then it has developed, it has gone worse in the past 2.5 years. So some of the things that happened was the TPLF leadership moved back to their northern enclave in Tigray. And after that, what happened is, in most cases, they have been trying to thwart the reform process. They refused to take part in the reform process. So what they were doing in the past 2.5 years were 2 things. In one hand, they were forming alliances with all that are ready to destabilize the country, to thwart the reform process. And on the other hand, they are financing or organizing groups to create mistrust between the different ethnic groups within the country. And in another hand, they were also building irregular militia in preparation for what we are seeing today. So these were some of the things that have been unfolding, and these were further escalated when COVID-19 hit, and when the Election Commission of Ethiopia postponed the election, announced the postponement of the election. That was very much justified because, as you know, when COVID-19 hit, most of countries have closed their borders. The supply chain was disrupted, and most of the things which are in back order for the election process didn't come to the country as planned. In addition to that, because of the unprecedented nature of the pandemic, voter registration, voter training, and things like that couldn't go ahead as planned because there were lots of restriction in gathering and movement. So following the constitutional process, House of Federation has postponed the election. And then what happened after that is the rogue group within the TPLF, in defiance with this announcement, they went ahead and organized their own election commission against the constitution. In Ethiopia, it is only the mandate of the Federal Election Commission to conduct elections. But anyway, they went ahead, and as usual, they have conducted election, and they said they won almost all the seats in the regional parliament. After that, the House of Federation called this an illegal election, unconstitutional and null and void. So it announced that they are illegitimate, and they in return called all the establishment, the federal government and the parliament illegitimate. And after that, they have refused to comply with any federal laws, directives and regulations, among other things. And the House of Federation has actually advised the government to direct all funds to local authorities so that they benefit the people of Tigray. As it was in previous time, while they were organizing the militia anyway, they were directing all funds which are for basic necessities like education and health. They were directing it to the militia they have been organizing. So this way, the people of Tigray would benefit better. And then after that, it escalated to what we have seen on early hours of November 4. In early hours of November 4, in a premeditated, well-orchestrated attack, they have attacked several bases of the Ethiopian National Defense Force Northern Command, which is act and which is very sad and heartbreaking for many Ethiopians, as this was an army that was stationed there in protection of the people of Tigray from any foreign aggression. And also it has been in service of the people of Tigray for more than 2 decades, building schools, building clinics, fighting COVID-19, fighting desert locusts and things like that. So this was, in general, what has transpired and how it has come to this point that we are now witnessing.
Thank you very much for that background. Could I ask what ways the government has tried to engage with the TPLF in order to try to keep them involved in the transition and the government's plans for federal regional dialogue?
The government has taken several initiatives in making EPRDF, in making TPLF rather, part of the reform process, because the people of Ethiopia has asked for change loud and clear. Maintaining the status quo was not an option. People who have been marginalized for a long time has to come to the center and have a saying in the direction the country is taking. For so long, what was happening was only 4 ethnic parties were responsible for the direction the country is taking for the past 27 years in a country where there are close to 80 ethnic groups. Lots of Ethiopians have been marginalized, economically, politically, you name it. So maintaining the status quo was not an option. Monopolizing all the power wasn't an option, but they were given the chance to be part of the leadership and to also take part in the reform process. But that didn't sit well with TPLF, because the system has been working for them, the system has enriched them, the system has worked tremendously for them, so they didn't want to change that, so they moved back to Tigray. But even after they moved back, several attempts were made by the federal government to solve the problem peacefully. The federal government has extended an olive branch several times. In addition to the federal government, actually, different initiatives were also in place. ambassador of peace. There were groups that called themselves ambassador of peace. They have been engaged with TPLF in an attempt to solve the differences amicably in a peaceful dialogue. In addition to that, religious leaders, close to 50 religious leaders and elders from different communities have also tried several times, but that didn't also turn any result. So all peaceful means have been the TPLF clique to the negotiating table so that we can solve this amicably.
Thank you very much. Social media is full of clashing narratives, as you well know, particularly about things like the origin of the conflict, precisely what happened at that point of origin, things like the role of Eritrea in the conflict. Could you shed any light on the origin, how it started, and how it's evolved?
So I think by now it is well established who started the conflict and what the intention was. At first, there might be some confusion in the international community, but they have come out on regional TV and they have detailed how they have planned and what the intention was to attack, to conduct a preemptive lightning attack, as they described it, to conduct a preemptive attack on the country's national defense force. So that has been already established, and I think there is no argument or no contestation there. And the plan, the argument that is raised with Eritrea has nothing to do with this. Eritrea and Ethiopia has been on a stalemate for 20 years, and there is no need to go back to that, because I think we have exhausted that, we have seen that, and I don't think there is any interest from the other side to engage in internal affair of Ethiopia. So the plan, as they described it, was to internationalize the conflict. As you have noted by now, they have attacked Eritrea. They have sent missiles to the Eritrean capital as well. So the attempt is to internationalize this conflict, this law enforcement operation, and then so that the international community can call for a dialogue so that they can be again, they can sit on the bargaining table and they can find their way back to power.
Thank you very much. I'd like to turn to the humanitarian aspect of the conflict for a moment. A conflict which has resulted in thousands displaced people and refugee heading to Eastern Sudan and elsewhere. And with the narratives on social media, we're also hearing about a wide range of numbers involved. Please, could you provide some clarity on the humanitarian situation and the support in place for these communities? Does this include cooperation with international organizations and NGOs?
Unfortunately, whenever there is any of the situation, in a situation like this, the most affected are the civilian community. So in this law enforcement operation, the government has been taking the necessary precaution and maximum care to protect the civilian from any harm on the civilian as much as possible. However, as you said, there are internally displaced people, and there are also people who are fleeing to Sudan, as you described it. So in order to address this problem, the government is working tirelessly, working with all stakeholders in order to provide the necessary humanitarian support. As we speak, there are there is already a commission that is established. There is already a consortium that is established, led by the Ministry of Peace, and which also include other federal agencies within Ethiopia, including disaster prevention and preparedness, Refugees and Returnees Commission, and also other civic society in Ethiopia. So there is a consortium that is established. This consortium has sent a fact-finding mission in the past weeks to identify what is needed on the ground. That fact-finding mission has returned. Now a corridor is opened, access route is opened, and already the basic necessities such as food, clean water, medicine, that is being provided for the internally displaced people. In addition to caring for the internally displaced people, the government is getting ready to return those who left their homes, to return, support them, rehabilitate them, and give them the necessary support until they get back to their normal day-to-day life. So that effort is underway, and we're working on this with our international partners, different UN agencies as well. As you know, Ethiopia is housing close to 1 million refugees from 26 different countries. We have a very good track record in working with international organizations like UNHCR, OCHA, ICRC. So this will be our partners as well in helping us provide the necessary support to the affected community and those who have also fled to the neighboring country. So that is already underway. So thus far, 4 shelters have been established. 4 shelters are built for those who are going to return. So lots of effort is already underway in this regard, and we are working with both local and international partners in order to solve this humanitarian issue.
Thank you very much. On Wednesday evening, we reached the end of a 72-hour deadline that the federal government imposed on the TPLF to surrender. What should we expect to happen next? Because there appears to be a bit of a standoff at the moment. We hear through different channels that some soldiers on the TPLF side are surrendering and coming out, and we hear that the federal government forces are still positioned around the periphery. Could you give us some views on this?
So as you said, the importance of the 72 hours window was to give civilians and those militia who want to surrender peacefully, to give them a chance to do so. And as you have mentioned, lots of people came out, lots of the militia has surrendered in peace. And many people also sought refuge in the nearby towns and cities. And those people are the one the federal government is now assisting in providing humanitarian support. So that was the objective of that 72 hours. So now the final phase of the rule of law operation would continue. Just to maybe backtrack a little bit. So this operation, this rule of law operation has 3 major objectives. It is a limited operation, which has 3 objectives. The first objective to bring perpetrators to justice. In any country, in any sovereign nation, no sovereign nation would stand an attack on its national army. And there are also several atrocities that has been committed while this law enforcement operation has been going on. As you have noted, Amnesty International has reported around 600 civilians have been murdered, have been brutally killed by the TPLF forces, or forces organized by the TPLF. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has also confirmed this. So there are several atrocities, and attacking a national army is not a misdemeanor in any country. I'm sure it's not a misdemeanor in Canada as well. In Ethiopian criminal code, it's a high treason. So these criminals, those who have called the shots, those who have committed this crime, have to be brought to justice. So that is one objective. The other objective is to ensure the rule of law, to end impunity and ensure law and order in the whole Tigray region. And the third is, as you know, when they attacked the Northern Command, they have taken control of the weaponry that they have warned to use against the rest of Ethiopia, which they also did. They have attacked the neighboring cities with missiles, and they have also warned to use it against our neighbors, and they have attacked Eritrea. So that tells you that these people have very bad intentions, very negative intentions. So we have to disarm them, or otherwise we have to destroy those armaments before they wreak havoc in the entire region. So those are the three clear objectives. So the final operation would continue, and perpetrators would be brought to justice. So that is what will happen in the coming days. But when we do this, we want to do it as carefully as possible, in a way it doesn't harm our people in Tigray. If that wasn't the case, by now the conversation we have would be the aftermath of the conflict. So the operation is being done, is being conducted carefully. That is why it has taken a little bit time. But now most part of Tigray is freed from these forces. Now the Mekelle is what is remaining. So that would also continue in a very careful manner. So that would be what would happen next.
Thank you very much. My last question focuses on Tigray and the people of Tigray. We would be very grateful if you could shed light on the region itself, Tigrayans all over the country. How will the region and these communities be supported following the end of this ordeal, whatever the end might look like?
So the people of Tigray and part and parcel of the rest of Ethiopia, they are Ethiopians first and foremost, and they are part and parcel of Ethiopia, and they would be supported. What happened to the past 2.5 years is the Tigray people have been alienated from the rest of Ethiopia. When this TPLF, the rogue group within TPLF went back to Mekelle, went back to Tigray, what they did was to create hysteria among Tigray by saying the anger that was directed to them, the anger, the protest that was directed to them in from 2015 to 2018, they have pictured it as if it is targeted against the Tigrayan people, which isn't true. And they have to claim that we are your only saviors against this, as it is the rest of Ethiopia. This group has enriched their kids to Ivy League schools. They have been the ones who are running all the businesses, all benefiting from this tremendously. But the people of Tigray still have a clean water problem. They have light as the rest of the country. They have lots of development questions. So when they go back and say, we are your saviors, they would ask, where were you the past 27 years? So the only way to still lead as a legitimate leader, even in Tigray, is to picture themselves as a defender of the people. So that is why they've been feeding hysteria. They have been creating hysteria among the Tigray people. So that they don't enjoy the newly found freedom, and so that they don't enjoy their civic and constitutional rights. So I think the people of Tigray would breathe a sigh of relief, and we will have, in following days, we will have, after we bring the criminals to justice, we will have a national dialogue. That has been the case. The government has been trying the past 2.5 years. We would embark on peace and reconciliation process. We have already, when the new administration came to power, the first thing it did was to have a peace and reconciliation commission. That peace and reconciliation commission has already presented its first findings of how we are going to go about it. So we would have a national, open national dialogue. We would have a peace and reconciliation. Ethiopians in difficult times, always they come together and they stand together. The rest of Ethiopia would stand with the people of Tigray, and we will heal as a nation, and we would go to our election, which is slated for late May or early June.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We have questions coming in through the chat function and through the Q&A panel. I'm going to turn to those now with your permission. Douglas Baba, who is a student at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, says the following. I listened to BBC News this morning, and the Attorney General of Ethiopia, Dr. Gideon, was on Stephen Saka's show Hard Talk. The Attorney General was defending the government's actions, assuring the international community that civilian lives were safe and that there was no cause for alarm. At the same time, Prime Minister Abiy has declined to talk to 3 eminent envoys. I think that has changed now because he has, sent by the African Union to broker peace. My question is, isn't the whole military intervention in Tigray being oversimplified by the government, especially when thousands of refugees are fleeing to neighboring countries such as Sudan?
It is unfortunate that, the civilian community has been affected by this. It is unfortunate, and I have mentioned that we are trying to even stay on top of that and provide the necessary assistance, and we are moving swiftly in order to address that problem. But the main problem in asking for negotiation, in really getting to the negotiating table or having any dialogue with this group is it sets precedent. As you know, any country wouldn't allow any group that is committing heinous crimes and committing treason. Any country wouldn't sit and negotiate with such group. If we do that, that sets precedent, and rogue groups like this everywhere would do the same and request a seat on the table and for negotiation. So that would further destabilize the country. Not only the country, it would destabilize the entire region. So that is why the government is saying we're not closed for dialogue, but we have to first bring perpetrators to justice. We have to bring those who have committed these crimes to justice, and then we would sit and discuss all the rest of our issues after putting our house in order. We would sit and discuss our issues with all parties involved and with all stakeholders.
I think that answers a couple of the other questions coming in. One from Obina Ifediora, who talks about the fact that military solutions are rarely resolved in Africa through military victories. So his question was about mediation, how seriously this would be considered. So if I could frame the question to get around the goalposts of a number of these questions on mediation, mediation seems like one hard stop. Dialogue is another one, but with accountability and justice brought to bear, in your view. So is the answer dialogue then? Should we not be talking about negotiations, mediation? Should we talk about dialogue in keeping with the national process already underway? Or is this over and above the national process, something quite distinct for the region?
So dialogue, as I mentioned earlier, we've been begging for dialogue. The federal government has been begging for cordial dialogue for the past 2.5 years. That wasn't the intention of this group. It hasn't been then, and it is not now. As I said, the main interest of this group is a seat on the table for negotiation, for power sharing negotiation. That is the main end goal of this group. Otherwise, if it was cordial dialogue, the government have done multiple attempts to bring them to the dialogue table. And in addition to that, religious leaders, peace ambassadors have been trying to do the same. So that is why I'm saying the main intention of this group is not just having cordial dialogue to solve the differences amicably in a peaceful manner. Rather, the intention is different. The purpose of trying to internationalize the conflict can tell you a lot about what the intention of this rogue group is.
Thank you very much. Hugh Siegel has a question coming in from Kingston, Ontario. Does Her Excellency fear that there are external forces to Ethiopia providing military or other aid to the TPLF so as to destabilize the federal government of Ethiopia?
So there are different explanations can be given, even if I won't mention by name who are, but we know that the TPLF has been working with internal and external actors to destabilize the country the past 2.5 years. But I can't speak to who is supporting and who is not at this point, since we have to have all the evidences in place so that we can come out and say accusations are serious. So we have to be careful of those. We don't throw them around. We have to have all our facts in check. But we know that there are forces, both outside, both external and internal, that they have been working with to wreak havoc in the country the past 2.5 years. The sporadic violence in different parts of the country, in one way or another, TPLF is involved with those, either in financing them or in organizing them, or in working with those who have caused those problems. So that would tell us a lot of things about what a TPLF is capable of, especially in destabilizing the government and to thwart the reform process as well.
Your Excellency, a number of questions are looking at reconciliation, and I'll just frame one of the questions that has come in. If the Ethiopian government is successful in addressing the TPLF armed uprising, are there any thoughts on how to achieve reconciliation with the Tigray population generally?
So as the federal government time and again indicated, is not targeting the people of Tigray. It is not even targeting TPLF as a party, but there is rogue group within TPLF that is calling all the shots. So committing all the heinous crimes that we have mentioned, what happened in Maikadra, attacking the federal forces, and even harboring those who have been wanted by the federal government for human rights abuse issues in the past 27 years and for corruption as well. So there are people who are identified, who are called out by name, who arrest warrants have been issued for. So the main target of this operation is to bring those people to justice. So it's not targeted against the people of Tigray, or it's not targeted against TPLF as a party. So the people of Tigray would be relieved to they would breathe a sigh of relief for what they have been through the past 27 years or even the past 2.5 years. They would have a saying on who would administer them. They would have a free election and choose their people. And we would also sit and have that reconciliation, that dialogue with TPLF as a party as well. So that is still open, that is still there. So we would have peace and reconciliation as a country, because that was what people have been asking for a long time. And that is, I think, it is time. And we would embark on that shortly after concluding this law enforcement operation.
Next question from Aaron Francis. He thanks you, Your Excellency, for the time to speak with students such as himself. He would like to ask what effect the conflict may have on the construction and ongoing negotiation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
I hope it wouldn't have any consequence on that, because this is a different matter, and whether it is the people of Tigray or the rest of Ethiopia, everyone is on the same page on this. So hopefully it wouldn't affect any of that. If the question is with the neighboring countries, I hope if they have that good intention. We have done a lot of groundwork in creating that trust with our neighbors, those who are in the lower riparian, both Sudan and Egypt. We have been trying to create their confidence in the process, and we've been negotiating for a long time. Most of those negotiations have been, most of the issues we had have been resolved. There are some outstanding issues that requires negotiation in a good faith. So I believe that they have that best intention, that good intention at heart, and they would continue with the negotiation. I hope that they're not neighbors that would take advantage of the current situation to take it to another direction. I don't believe they do, but I believe that the negotiation would go on, as we have already established lots of negotiated lots of the issues, and the outstanding issues would be negotiated at the same manner.
Thank you very much. Another question about the young diaspora Ethiopians in the international community, many of whom are fueling negative social media battles. The question is, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think the comment for that would be, as you know, the diaspora is here. The diaspora is far away from home. I know they care about what goes on in the country. In most cases, they are well-meaning and well-intentioned. On the other hand, they're very much removed. They're very much far away from the fact on the ground. So social media didn't help either. As you know, there are lots of misinformations that have been going on in social media. In most cases, they are victim of those misinformation on the social media. So they didn't wait and check. They didn't have the means maybe to check what is actually going on on the ground. And on the other hand, they don't know the repercussions of whatever they're saying, whatever comment they're putting on social media. They don't see firsthand what it does to the people on the ground. So the problem of being far away and being removed from the situation is not helping the diaspora here. So what I ask of the diaspora here in Canada is to weigh the situation very carefully, to hear at all sides of the story, ask the hard questions, ask for facts before engaging and before fueling the division further, because it is affecting lives on the ground in Ethiopia.
Thank you very much. Another question through the chat function on the AU. If the AU cannot assist in mediation, what role do you envisage for these three envoys?
So we have tremendous respect for AU, and we are all for African solution for African problem. You know, we have been championing that for long, and we are true Pan-Africanists. Our Pan-Africanism transcends governments. So that always stands. And what we have done with the envoys is to explain what it means and what is at stake. As I have mentioned earlier, what is at stake is the stability of the entire country, the stability of the region. It is to carefully explain that, show all sides of the fact, and also ask for their understanding. That's what was being done. But that doesn't mean AU wouldn't have a role in the future. We would see what role AU would play, and then we would ask for that assistance when needed. But at this point, what we are trying to explain to AU and to the international community is there are lots of things at stake to allow this kind of forces, this kind of rogue groups to the negotiating table is dangerous, and it sets a bad precedent for other similar groups, other insurgents or similar groups to do the same, to attack the National Defense Force and then cause humanitarian crisis in the region, attract the attention of the international community. And then that is a very short ticket to come to basically the negotiating table and to sit and discuss a power sharing agreement. So that is a shortcut. So all parties who champion democracy, multi-party democracy in Ethiopia should be aware of that and should be aware of the precedent it sets. So that is what we are trying to explain to the world and to the African Union as well. And I believe they have they know the context, and I think they have a better understanding, I hope.
Great. Well, on the multilateral issue, there are questions about Ethiopians' contribution to peace support operations, particularly in the region. Somalia, Abyei in South Sudan, Juba in South Sudan. Is there any risk posed to regional stability by drawing on these troops and the capacity in the wider region to attend to issues in Tigray?
Ethiopia has, I think, enough military personnel to take care of this peacekeeping operation. So it doesn't need to draw from our peacekeeping commitment. Currently, Ethiopia is the #1 contributor to UN peacekeeping mission. The #1 contributor in the world. Ethiopia contributes to UN peacekeeping mission and AU peacekeeping mission. And our commitment in AMISOM and the rest part of Africa would stand and would continue. And we don't think we need to pull out any of those forces in the peacekeeping for this operation. As you can see, the operation is almost concluding. We have the federal forces are in control of 90% of Tigray. The remaining is just the Mekelle area. And we would carry out that operation responsibly and as carefully as possible so that it doesn't have an impact on the civilian community, the civilian society there. So there is no need to pull any of the forces from our peacekeeping commitment.
Thank you very much. A question about Prime Minister Abiy himself. Prime Minister Abiy recently won the Nobel Peace Prize, but he also stated his opposition to the international community becoming involved in this conflict. What is the relationship between or the role of the international community in Ethiopia today?
I think the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed won the Nobel Peace Prize for all the right things. He has salvaged the country from the brink of war. What was happening during the protests leading from 2015 to 2018, the country was in the brink of collapse. So basically what he did is salvage the country, open the political space, invite all who has a say in the politics of the country, to invite them back to the country. He has also, as I said, released political prisoners. He has reformed the justice system. There were lots of questions of human rights abuse. So he has tried to bring perpetrators to justice. He has tried to do lots of reforms that were asked by the people of Ethiopia. In addition to that, he has ended a 2-decade-long stalemate between Ethiopia and Eritrea. By that, he has joined families. Families have seen each other for the first time after 20-something years. Not only that, he has, by doing that, by ending that costly stalemate, it didn't only economically benefit the country, but also it brought peace to the region. He has played key roles in brokering peace in the region as well. The role he has played in Sudan, in South Sudan. So the main role he played is to champion peace. So that was why he was recognized. And he is doing the same today. He is trying to keep the country from falling into chaos by making those who are wreaking havoc accountable. He is trying to bring stability back in the country. So that is why he is asking the international community to understand the implications of the requests for mediation, the request for a negotiation, and things like that. It has its own implication. The Ethiopian people have to live with that implication, but it doesn't end with the Ethiopian people. That it would destabilize, it would have a negative impact on the region as well. And on the that would trickle down to the international community as well. So what he is doing is asking the international community for understanding. Most of the things, the conflict between the law enforcement operation is, or what is going on in Ethiopia right now is not as simplistic as many people think. It has lots of complex layers. So the international community has to understand those, the implication, the consequence of those. So he has been calling to the international community to understand what it means. Things that are not done elsewhere. I don't think there is any country that would sit and negotiate with a rogue group that has attacked its national defense forces. As I described earlier, in Ethiopia, that is the highest treason. I don't know if it is a misdemeanor in any country. And what happened in Maikadra, it is a genocide. It is basically a war crime. What this group has done, what they ordered to be done in Maikadra is also a heinous crime. I don't know if there is any country which would allow that and sit and negotiate with a group like this. So he has been asking for understanding in the situation we are in.
Thank you very much. Another question, how will this conflict shape the outlook of Ethiopian youth towards each other and their shared future? What needs to occur today so that we can avoid the repetition of such conflicts in the future?
This is not a conflict between the Ethiopian youth or the Ethiopian people. This is some rogue group who has taken the entire region as a hostage in order to find its way back to power. So this operation is bringing those accountable to to justice. It is not a conflict between brothers and sisters. It's not a conflict between people. The people are trying to embrace each other at this difficult time. There are movements that have started to really answer needs of the people who are affected by this incident. So that shows you the love and the unity of the Ethiopian people. Though we don't see eye to eye in many things, we have different opinions on different agendas, but we unite when it comes to the time of crisis, the time of need. So that is what the Ethiopian people are doing. That is the unity you see behind the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. That is the unity you see behind the government at this point. So that tells you a lot about how Ethiopians come together in time of crisis. And as I mentioned, we will have a peace and reconciliation process. We have to go through that. We have to put on the table all the things that has to be put on the table. We have to have that open dialogue. That would continue. That would be the healing process. I know would be long. The difficult task would be the task that follows. We are going to get through that as well, but it is not a conflict between people, people of any ethnic group. It is a rogue group that is taking the entire region as a hostage and trying to find its way back to power.
Perhaps, Your Excellency, I can finish with a question. Based on the fact that you're here in Canada as Ethiopia's ambassador to Canada, what can countries like Canada do in the current circumstances to support the country?
So we are very grateful. We have a very good partnership with Canada. The relation between the two countries have been very strong. We are development partners. But apart from that, we have a lot to learn from Canada. Apart from the humanitarian support that the people of Canada has extended to those who are affected by this crisis, which we are very much grateful for. Once this operation is over, there are lots of things we can learn from Canada. Canada is a true federation, and there are lots of things we can learn from that. The Canadian civil society can play a role in the peace and reconciliation process. There would be recommendations that we would maybe look at. So there are lots of things we can learn from Canada. But in addition to that, the reforms are meant to address the social injustice, the economic and the political marginalization issues that have been rampant in the country for the past 27 years. So the freedom of speech issues, the stifling of freedom of speech, and all other injustices in the country. So helping the reform take root. The reform is targeting to address all these problems. So helping the reform take root is one of the things we would ask of our allies and our friends, because we have to, even if there are challenges that we are facing, even if it takes time to build systems that carry the change, even if structures and established norms has to slowly change, we are committed to see it through, and we need our friends' support in institutionalizing the change and in helping the reform take root. So there are lots of things, there are lots of ways Canada and the rest of the world can help Ethiopia be a stable country that it was.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Nasise from Ottawa, thank you so much for giving your time, particularly during these excessively busy circumstances, to the Balsillie School of International Affairs this morning and its wider community. We are grateful for your sharing of your insights. Our thoughts and prayers remain with Ethiopia and all Ethiopians, and we wish the people very best in the months to come. Thank you very much to all of you in the audience for joining us. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you very much for the time, for your time, and for having me as well. And I would like to thank your audience too. I'm really grateful for them being here and waiting patiently to hear me out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was excellent. All the very best. Bye-bye, everyone.